As we identified the topics for this year's group of seminars or webinars, a number of them that you recommended came up related to strategic planning. Earlier this year, we did conduct a strategic planning in alignment workshop, and now we're carrying out another one which falls right in the time of the year when everyone's doing their planning. So welcome aboard, folks. We have published a section of the Juran Handbook called Juran's Quality Essentials for Leaders, and in past webinars we've tied back to this, and there have been 9 business essentials that we believe and that our topics are based around. Obviously, one is that business excellence driven by a good quality product, service, and organization is the way to begin. We talk about leadership's role and what they have to do to drive the business, the universal methods and tools that enable leadership's role to be carried out, how to strategically align the business and all the improvements and activities and initiatives, which is part of the topic we are talking about today, and the additional 9 business essentials related to breakthrough improvement, control and compliance, creating new products and services, business process management, and benchmarking. So today we're focused on the one that's highlighted there, and that is vital tips for strategic planning. Now, before we get into those tips, I'd like to talk about why we picked this one. And Forbes had a particular article that I found interesting, and for those of you who kind of want to know how we create these webinars, obviously I've been involved with this for over 28 years, and I have been practicing and learning and researching. But prior to every webinar, I try to do a scan of the local media and scan of what's out there on Google and other search engines, and I come up with some good additional things for my presentation. This was one of them today. 10 reasons why strategic plans fail. Having a plan simply for plan's sake. Not understanding the environment or focusing on results. Usually folks like to focus on the planning itself and not necessarily on the outcome. Partial commitment, not just to the planning process, but to actually partial commitment to any action plan that comes out of there, that it was not bought in the first place or was pie-in-the-sky things. Many times we see strategic planning activities fail or falter because it's not done with the leadership team. Strategic planning is about getting the leadership in a given business unit or organization together to be able to define the direction it wants to go. And so having the wrong people is not going to benefit you, although it might come out with a great plan, just may not ever get executed. We hear this all the time, and I'm sure by a show of hands, how many of you have heard this one? We write the plan and put it on the shelf. Let's see your show of hands here. Good, I'm not alone, and I'm sure you're not alone. Additionally, the next 5 reasons for this plan: unwillingness or inability to change. So we come up with a plan. We come up with a new plan, and we had a great planning process, but nobody wants to do it because they're unable to change or unwilling to change. Having the wrong people in leadership positions carry out those changes. Ignoring marketplace reality, facts, and assumptions. This is an area we're going to talk about today as one of our 7 areas, but we want to be the best, but we're not even close to the top 10. So if we're going to be the best in a year, that's not reality, unless you're going to really make the commitment to do that. Use some facts, not just assumptions and assertions. And matter of fact, the assumptions you make, how do you know they're really going to pan out? And although strategic planning is somewhat guesswork, it's not just guesswork. It's guesswork based on the realities of where you're operating in, where you are, and what could be happening. And it is a guideline for progress. It's not necessarily a stake in the ground that never moves. Times change, things change. So then no accountability or follow-through and unrealistic goals. So these 10 reasons why strategic plan fails, coupled with the input that we receive from many of our listeners and folks like yourself, we came up with, and I came up with, the 7 strategies or 7 vital tips for you folks. But I'd like to do some ground leveling first. Many of you have your own terminology for strategic planning. Often strategic planning or strategic planning in alignment or strategic planning and deployment include, if you're doing it for the first time, figure out what our future destination is, what is our vision, what is our current mission, what are our values, what key performance indicators we have, et cetera, et cetera. So you all have some kind of terminology, so I just want to make sure we set the pace for our terminology for this discussion today. So let's talk about strategic planning as the organization's process for defining its longer-term direction and making decisions on allocating resources to pursue that direction. That term could be, and typically is, longer than one business year, which we would refer to as a business plan. Business plan is typically a subset of strategic planning that's bitten off in pieces, either by business unit, by product line, by service line, and over periods of time. So strategic is looking beyond 1 year, typically 3 to 5, and could be many, many more after that. And the outcome of the strategic planning process is a strategic plan. And that means that plan is a roadmap to grow your business or move forward in the direction you pursue. Now, many folks try to focus on having a complete strategic plan full of everything you could possibly put into a plan. And therefore, it's long and tedious and on the shelf. When we talk about strategic planning, I want to talk about the process by which you create the plan, the engagement, the collaboration. And if you do that well, the strategic plan is a guideline and a simpler document. And the business plans become all the detail behind a document. And so often folks try to put too much into a strategic plan. And really, the farther you look out in terms of time and distance, the fuzzier it is. So it goes that a strategic plan should not be so detailed. It should be a direction, and a direction based on the best leaders and the best people you have in your business. Whether you're a for-profit or not-for-profit, whether you're a large company or a small company, everybody has to have a strategic discussion if you want to think longer than tomorrow's business. And in today's fast-paced moving, you need to think ahead. Now, there are many strategic planning models. This one, like many, are easy to look at, easy to follow. There are some that are circular because everybody believes a strategic planning process is a never-ending process. Some of them are colorful, and they describe where you want to be, where you are now, how you're going to get there. Others are even simplified and simple. Others are pretty crazy and looks like something that was created smoking something back in the 1960s. So many different models to choose from. And whatever you're using, I'm not going to be a critic of it. I'm not going to discuss it. What I want to do is just talk about the basis behind your model, which should include, like this boring flowchart here, input to the strategic planning process, such as vision, mission, policy, values, and then the outcome, which is a discussion and engagement and collaboration with people to come up with some key strategies and strategic goals. And I'm only differentiating between a key strategy and a goal as a length of time. A strategy is a bundled set of goals. A strategic goal is a bundled set of annual goals. So you end up with a set of business plan goals, an implementation process. You have to have some review and audit. And then you have to make sure that that is all deployed and communicated to the organization. And then you have some periodic assessment. So whatever model you use, I just want to make sure that you have some basic components of that model to think about in this discussion. Additionally, there are many strategic deployment models, as this nice, simple policy deployment matrix. If you practice Hoshin planning, and Hoshin planning is basically the detailed planning that Japanese use, you end up with a deployment matrix that looks something like this. It's not as complex as it looks, but nonetheless, it's a way to take the words and put them into action. Other folks have various plans that are set out over time to deploy their various strategies. And then still others like us have a very simple kind of aligned initiatives and projects to goals, strategies, and vision, mission, and values. So what I want to talk about, the tips are how to do strategic planning, not what should be in the plan. But when you get folks together and you're trying to do strategic planning, what could make that better so that the outcome, that strategic plan, that strategic direction is much better. Now, instead of doing some polls today, we're just going to do some hand raising. How many of you right now feel that your organization is really good at strategic planning, and your answer when you raise your hand that we're really good is based on how well everyone in the organization really understands the direction it's going? So if you feel that your organization is really good at strategic planning and you believe we all understand the direction it's going, let's see a show of hands. Give you a second here. So not an overwhelming number of folks, only about 15% of the folks on the call. Now, how many of you feel that my organization, whether you run it or you're part of it, your organization needs to do a better job of strategic planning? Good. I feel better. We have a good topic. So today we're going to focus on how we could do it better, not how do we do it. If you'd like more information on how do we do it, you can go back and look at some of our prior webinars, or you can contact us for further information there. So let's talk about vital tip number one. You saw some of the models that I was using. You saw some of the complexity, the colorful, and so many times people want 8, 9, 10 sections of a plan that we need to get through. So we set up our first meeting or our meeting in a 2-day agenda, a 2-day retreat, and we try to go through all these sections of the plan, the executive summary, our goals, our objectives. When in reality, what do you really want to get out of the activity where you physically are engaged with people to do the planning? And in my belief, it should be to focus on 3 simple things. Where are we going and maybe why? Where are we now and why? And how will we get to this new destination? So my first tip is simplify your planning process, particularly for the event where you get together and start discussing the process. It's much easier to boil it down and get detail later so that you get valuable time spent. So your strategic plan may be full of detail now and maybe later, but the collaboration and engagement in the planning must be easy to understand. So by setting out our first objective is saying, let's discuss where are we going and why we want to go there. And here is where leadership might state, this is where we believe the future is, this is where our competitive advantage is, and this is where our vision has been, and now we need to redirect ourselves to see that vision. It's a discussion of clearly where the direction of your organization is headed. That first question that I asked you folks a moment ago, how many of you feel you have a very good strategy by evidence that people know the direction you're going? It's often a symptom that if people don't know where they're going, neither do the leadership, because we know that people carry out what they're told to carry out. And if you're constantly going in different directions, or if you don't know where you're going, there's a pretty good chance the strategic plan is flawed. So my first tip, simplify it. If you're one of the people on the strategic planning team, if you're a leader, if you are just a strategic planner, try to boil down the strategic planning outcomes, the elements of the plan you want, into smaller bite-sized pieces, and we could fill in the detail later. It's much better to spend an hour or two having leaders explain where we're going and having a common understanding, and then asking ourselves, let's see where we are, because then the outcome is going to be, how do we get there? What do we have to do differently? So vital tip 1, simplify the process. Vital tip 2, set up a series of questions that you'd like to get asked during the time you are having a dialogue and engaged. And you notice I keep emphasizing here dialogue and engagement and collaboration, because Strategic planning is not something you could do by passing a piece of paper back and forth to everyone. It's a place where people have to really get their opinions and ideas. People in leadership, people in the know, whether that's technical know-how or marketing know-how or customer know-how or quality know-how, it's people in the know of the organization and where we're headed. And so selecting a set of questions that you'd like to get answered, like the ones in the first three we did, can help lead to a more robust and more enlightening discussion. And hopefully the end result is a better plan. Questions like, what is our single biggest limiting factor inside our company that may prevent us from attaining our vision? Or what is the single biggest factor that is keeping us from our vision? What are the 5 ways that we can make our limiting factors less limiting? What sweet spots or good areas that we have as opportunities that we know of that we could exploit? What business are we trying to build? In other words, instead of filling in the blanks, set up some questions that we can all dialogue on and communicate on and come up with some responses, which then gets us closer to understanding the direction we want to go. This is actually not just a good planning technique, but it's a good educational technique because the questions you ask help us prepare the plan. And so by preparing these questions, rather than saying, let's determine what our strategic goals are for the next 3 years, ask the question, what are we having difficulties with now in trying to meet the current goals? And was the current goal not good enough? Was it hard? Was it impossible? So develop a set of questions that can be answered by the appropriate people that may lead you to a better outcome. Now, often there are too many actions to monitor in a given detailed plan. And one thing we'd like to do is get yourself to ask 3 strategic results you're looking for. We call this leveraging the power of 3. So many times as we are doing the planning and then we are carrying out the plan, we do too many things. I didn't just pick my vital tip number 1 with 3 items for any particular reason, except it's the power of 3. It's, 1's too few, 2's too few, 3 seems to be about right, 4 you could take sides. So leverage the power of 3. And often, there are too many things to do, and everything you do, kind of break it down into small parts. So when you're planning, have three areas, and when you're carrying out the plan, maybe take 3 of the action items each quarter or each month and review progress to them, instead of trying to review progress to the entire plan each month or each quarter. And then each subsequent quarter, you can look at other things. So what this forces you to do is kind of be realistic in your approach. And we want you to be realistic in your approach, but we want you to be relentless in the discipline of monitoring that approach. If we were to ask by a show of hands, I know the outcome is, how well do you execute your plan? And excellent companies do well. Non-excellent companies don't. Why don't they? Because they don't have that relentless pursuit of monitoring and driving that goal. And so being realistic in our approach, which is be realistic in our plan and how we monitor it, but then be relentless. Make sure that those people that are responsible for updating us on those 3 action items are actually going to carry out those 3 action items in that quarter to make sure they do it. If you're a very large organization, you can imagine how many different things there are to do. And the higher you are in the organization, the more you've got to recap. A strategic planning review process should be done at the level most appropriate. So if I am carrying out 4 annual goals, and I'm one of 10 business units, and we each have 4 annual goals, and that's 40 annual goals, that next layer above us has got to monitor 40 annual goals, which probably they're not all different. So let's say there are 20 annual goals. Could you imagine sitting in a meeting for 12, 14 hours and reviewing those? It's better to sit in meetings over a period of time and review 3 at a time. And so that's the approach to leveraging the power of 3. A very interesting few vital tips that I stole professionally from a few very good strategists. One of them was conduct experiments. And you could do this in the planning process and after the planning process. Most strategic planning involves guesswork. We're trying to look into the crystal ball. In the same way, a designer is looking ahead trying to figure out a new product or a new innovation that's going to fulfill some need. We're doing it based on maybe problems that we see in society, difficulties people are having, diseases we want to cure, research we want to complete. But it involves guesswork and hypothesis. And we believe that guesswork in the hypotheses we provide, we're going to achieve some certain outcomes. And oftentimes we don't get those certain outcomes. And why? Well, one could say our guesswork wasn't very good, or our hypotheses were never proven. So over time, management and managers become kind of uncomfortable with, okay, here we go. We got a strategy. We've got some assumptions. And now I've got to change the way I operate. I've got to bring in this new technology to use. I have to retrain my staff. But yet I'm not even sure if this is the right thing to do. So one very clever idea is to conduct experiments. In the strategic planning process, I've seen organizations that take point counterpoint. We come up with a strategic goal or a direction for the company, and one team is assigned to talk about and brainstorm the best success outcome we have, and another team is working on what's the worst thing that will happen if we achieve or don't achieve this outcome. So in the planning process, you can set up some at least theoretical teams. As you actually agree to a strategic plan, which is a long-term plan, you also might be able to overcome this by allowing the development of some short-term experiments, meaning just like we create process improvement teams, we're really saying, let's go try and prove our assumption in our strategy. Let's go do some research on who else might have done it. Let's find out if anybody has done something similar to it. Some call these scouting missions. And so in order to get managers to feel comfortable and to get their staffs feel comfortable, say, you know, what we have is we have 120 days to see if this assumption is actually going to be true or not. And let's go do the analysis. Rather than having everybody in the team that's doing the planning debate the assumption, just set the theory to say this is one of the assumptions we would like to test, and as an outcome of this planning process, we're going to assign a couple of experiments. I think this is one of the more clever ways. And it's actually the same tip that you would do if you were doing a root cause analysis. We have a theory as to what's causing a problem, and it might be the theory that actually is the root cause. But if we jump to solution without knowing if it's true or not, we could get lucky or unlucky, and many times we are unlucky. So similar here, if we're looking into a crystal ball and we're not sure where we're going, can we get a better chance of achieving where we're going by doing some testing of our theories beforehand? And this leads to an issue. One is, what if our assumptions aren't true and we abandon them too soon, and a competitor does the same assumption and thinks differently? Well, there's nothing you could do to avoid that, but you can minimize the risk of having that happen by doing these experiments. Because the belief is the more we learn about it, the less guesswork we have, and the better our hypotheses might and our theories might take place. So try some scouting missions and see where you go. Can I have a show of hands? I'm going to keep your hands moving. I want everybody to use their left hand this time. Do you do anything like this in your organization? Have you seen this work where you conduct some kind of mini experiment to prove its value or not? Good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite you guys back to do a presentation on what works or doesn't work. And I wish we could have a two-way communication here, but I'd love to hear how you create and conduct these experiments because I think they're a really good opportunity. They're also very good to just get people to work together. Here's one that I stole out of Forbes magazine. Banish fuzzy language. And not just words that are fuzzy, like robust, but phrases, or worse, goals. If you apply the SMART goal method to goal setting, you shouldn't get fuzzy language, but oftentimes we really do get a lot of fuzziness. Some of this is laziness. Some of this is inexperience. Some of this comes from not knowing what to do. But when we have strategic plans that are filled with jargon, and I call them consensus statements, meaning we all wordsmith it to a point, it sounds like our goal is to leverage our world-class operating capabilities, or reshape our pricing and trade strategy, or let's triple our business. And we work so hard at getting those phrases, you walk out and they mean absolutely nothing. And so this is actually a symptom. Fuzzy language is a symptom that we don't have a clear idea what we're trying to do or how to do it. What is it about our pricing and trade strategy that we want to reshape? Are we too high priced? Are we too low priced? What is it? If you've stated reshape our pricing strategy, that means there's something wrong. If we want to leverage our world-class operating capabilities, why? Which ones? What evidence do we have? So breaking those words down is just like carrying out an operational definition. Fuzzy language is interpreted by people in many different ways. Clear language is not. So the clearer you can get an operational definition, the better off you are. People who lump sentences into one or two words often end up with fuzzy statements. And people who have very long goals often create it by consensus. Somewhere in the middle is the right place. And one organization I read about actually banned words like leverage, synergy, robustness. Why? Because they felt that those words are already fuzzy. So why would we keep using them? If you said to someone, I want you to leverage our pricing strategy, that might mean go lower the price and get more business. Another one might be go raise the price and just go after the best customers. Banish fuzzy language. I also want to revert back one slide. Someone just made a great comment here. These scouting missions, some people call them pilot projects, pilot projects or experiments. And also, a gentleman here says that they've had significant issues with strategic lexicon. For example, if you Google goal and objective, it took us a long time to get over that. Believe it or not, yes, I work for the federal government. So many times we want to discuss the lexicon or the fuzzy language, and we actually believe that the fuzzy language is true. And it's okay if you work for the federal government. We have a belief that there are good agencies and good people everywhere that they work. Sometimes you're constrained by the difficulties of the business models you're stuck with, and sometimes you're stuck with them in the government. But so the lexicon you use and jargon, for instance, if you're in the government or if you're in a business like the government, you actually get tons and tons of four-letter acronyms and three-letter acronyms, and just trying to understand what they mean cause confusion. And so be careful with fuzzy language. Now, how many of you have tried to use a template, a strategic planning template? And it might look like this one here, but let me see, show of hands. How many of you use templates? A lot of folks. Now, templates are great. Templates, thanks to places like Microsoft and Word and things like that, are really good. They help us eliminate thinking about how to shape something, thinking about how to create graphs and things like that. And over time, we've gotten to it. I guess the way we learn is by putting things in templates. If you can put it in templates form, it saves efficiency. It also can improve clarity. But there are times where you need a template and times you do not. Let me tell you a simple example. If we are a process improvement team and we want to understand how a flow works, one of the first things that I recommend and like to do is just ask the simple question, each of you tell me in 6 steps how you go from here to there. And then let's take those 6 steps and let's use Post-its and let's put them up on a chart and how to go here to there. And once we agree on those 6, let's expand it to 12 and let's expand it to 24. And what we're doing is we're creating a better understanding together as to how this picture looks, and we're kind of building on it. And that's good, process mapping technique. Now, the same thing goes for a SIPOC. A SIPOC is a one-page template to do high-level flow diagramming. And it's a great tool when it's completed to show the high-level steps, the inputs, the outputs, the suppliers, and customers. But so often, a process improvement team wants to begin by filling in the blanks of the SIPOC. And they'll start by saying, what are the 5 or 6 steps that go into the center process or the P section? And then immediately start asking, well, what's the input to each of those? What's the output to each of those? Who's the supplier? Who's the customer? And the assumption is that there's only one. Otherwise, I can't fit the template. A template is a place to place your consensus answer. A template is a place to place what you've all agreed to. So in other words, a strategic planning template, just like a SIPOC template, is a place to put answers. Answers that you came up with through discussion, through experiment, through exercise, through some kind of method where you've agreed that this is what it is. Now, does a one-page strategic planning document benefit communication? Absolutely. But the outcome of strategic planning should be agreed upon direction. And if we spend all our time trying to fill in the boxes, we might lose good discussion. So what we want to do is have discussion about the elements that are going into the plan, and then fill in the plan at the end. There are so many templates available out there, and I hear we've lost business because we don't push a one-page strategic planning template. Let's face it, if you're a multi-billion-dollar organization with a few 100,000 people, yeah, you might be able to get some stuff on a one-page sheet of paper, but clearly it's not going to be enough detail to be valuable. But it looks good. It's easy to present. Unfortunately, a good strategy may not be that easy. So we have a phrase that I like to use, beware of templates. I'm not saying don't use them, but we get in a tendency to fill in boxes. A very important template that's used in many organizations is some kind of root cause corrective action template, like an 8D document. And these are great templates. They tell you the 8 areas that you need to get answers to, like what is the problem, what is the solution, what are you doing for containment, and what is the root cause. And each box looks equal, but in reality, the one box where you have to prove the root cause is not equal. You have to do a lot of things. Now, in the end, when you do those things, you can place in that box what you did, and it makes logical sense. But to try to go through that template and say, oh, I know the root cause was Jane or John not documenting something, so let's blame Jane or John. So let's be cautious of templates. Let's use templates properly, and our belief is a template is where you place your answers to the discussion. And there are many, many ways to think about that. Someone said, the one-page document is the 50-foot level and then deep dive into the process. That's okay. The outcome of the discussion should be the template. It should not be the way to fill in the blanks, and that's kind of the way I like to look at that discussion. And our 7th tip here, so often that we think that we have to answer every question with a specific answer in our strategic planning. And we feel very uncomfortable if we don't agree on something. And so often we agree on it and then we don't like it. So another great suggestion that I learned about was whenever you can't come to consensus in a planning session, do one of two things. Parking lot that for further analysis, or in the meeting, conduct a brainstorming session right at that instance. Now, a brainstorming session is different than just discussion. A brainstorming session says, okay, let's set up a true brainstorming session for the next 40 minutes. And what we're going to do is we're going to define what we're going to brainstorm. Let's say it's why we believe we're not able to penetrate market X. And we are going to have just a free flow of ideas on that, regardless of status. And we're going to then take a look at that list and see if we've got something new. And more than likely, if you do that properly, the stimulation that goes on in the brain will create a much more thorough understanding of the issue that you have in a very short time. That may make you feel a lot better that maybe we were completely off base on this, or maybe we really are up to something, and now we have a better understanding. So often we confuse making lists with brainstorming. Brainstorming is a process by which you get the brain free-flowing in a different portion of the brain rather than the analytical side, and we build off each other's ideas. Simple tool that's not used properly in group sessions, but it can be. And this cute little statement here was one that helped me put that in perspective. If you can't read it well, it says, we're brainstorming here, and there are no dumb ideas. But if we weren't brainstorming, that would have been a really, really dumb idea. Often you hear there's no bad ideas. Well, if you're in a discussion and there's a leader in the room who doesn't like someone's opinion, that opinion could get stopped very quickly because it's a, quote, dumb idea. Well, if you're set up a brainstorming session and put some rules in place, it might be the dumb ideas that actually get to solve your problems or become the direction. And so often folks are shy or afraid to actually elaborate on their dumb ideas, and so they keep them to themselves. They walk out of the room and they say, I've got an answer to that technical problem. I've seen it before. Well, why didn't you give an answer? Well, because every time I bring it up, they tell me it's a dumb idea. So I stop bringing it up. Yet they might have the actual answer to what you want to do. So here we have 7 of my tips on what to do to improve your brainstorming. Now, what I'd like you to do is I want you to jot on a little piece of paper or on your iPad if you're a techie. And I want you, of these 7 tips, which one do you think is something you didn't think about before and you're going to give it a try? I'm going to let you think about that. Which one of these 7 tips, and kind of work back for you so you can get to see them. Beware of templates, number 6. Banish fuzzy language, number 5. Conduct experiments when stuck, number 4. Leverage the power of 3. Too many actions, so limit the actions and stack them up over time. Number 2, develop the right questions for your planning session that you need good answers to. And number 1, simplify your planning process by stating 3 specific statements: where are we going, where are we now, and how we get there. Which one of these 7 do you think is something new that you could benefit from? And now I'd like by show of hands, how many of you picked number 1? Great. We got 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. How many of you picked number 2? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, got something there. Leveraging the power of 3. Good chunk of 13 folks. And I'm getting up to some fun ones here that I know that people never thought about before. Conduct experiments. 2. Banish fuzzy language. We've got 7. And number 6, beware of templates. Boy, I was really hoping I'd get a whole bunch of people saying, I wish I could beware of templates. And the last one, brainstorm when stuck. Now, last question, and then I'll summarize. How many of you feel you've got no vital tip out of this session whatsoever? Raise their hand. And then I'm going to take your name down, and I'm going to contact you personally. No takers. Okay, good. Listen, folks, we try to do these every month. We also give you access to the final presentation. We also publish these webinars live on our free app that we provide to everyone and anyone who would like it. It's called Juran's Quality Essentials, and you can find it on Google Play and Apple. It's got a lot of great stuff on there. It's got all the webinars and a lot of other things that are free. What we ask in return is that you pass it on to other folks, let them download it, pass along any comments or topics that you'd like to have discussed in your organization that you might be able to focus on. Keep coming back for more, and if you are ever stuck and you need some help, please contact me directly or Juran Institute. And we also post up here, if you'd like a follow-up call, we do conduct these free. They take quite a bit of work to get them up and running, and our payback is when you guys find some benefit in it and contact us. So please, if you ever get stuck and you need help, contact us. And we do have a couple of minutes extra. This is a little bit quicker. Are there any questions that you'd like to have posted, and I could respond very quickly to you? Our next session is coming up in December, and it's actually a very unique session. It's called 103 Ways to Celebrate Dr. Juran's December 24th birthday. And like Dr. Juran, who coined the term the Pareto Principle, the Pareto Princess, because there's so much frozen going on, the Pareto Principle, we are going to take those 103 actual ways to celebrate and apply the Pareto Principle and tell you the most important ones that you can focus on. So we hope we took a lighter subject in December so that you can come back and not have to think too hard during the holiday season here and in most places around the world. I have one question. Is it absolutely necessary to have everyone in the organization understand the direction of the organization? Well, the answer to that is yes, but how and how deep? And I'll give you an example. Years ago, we were doing an assessment of an organization, and one of the questions, and this is a question that actually is in the Baldrige application and any good quality award application, what % of your employees understand the strategic direction of the company? And leadership will say 100%. And then the auditors will come in and they'll try to figure it out, what it is. And there's always, it seems to be an inverse relationship between an organization that thinks they know it and what it is and what it actually is. So that becomes a gap and you have to fill it. But there are other organizations that don't have that gap. One in particular, we were doing a comparison of two mines. These are mines in the ground, not in your brain. And in these mines, everybody wears helmets. And on the helmets of this one company was the vision of the company. And when we asked people in that organization if they knew, and we would ask them to tell us what the direction of the company was, it was less than 10% knew the direction of the company, even though on their helmets was a statement of direction. Another competitor-like company had nothing documented. But when you ask the question, what was the direction of the company, everybody understood it. And to answer your question, does everybody need to understand it? They must understand it, but not by sitting them down and communicating to it, but by the daily decisions that management makes of what is right and what is wrong, what is being spent and what is not being spent, what we spend it on, gives a very clear direction as to where we're going. So if you say that we're an excellent company and we want to be the #1 in customer service, and we plaster that everywhere, and then we cut the contact staff, we cut the hours, we make it difficult for customers to actually reach us. We don't give callback numbers. We're told to not spend much time on the phone with customers. Those employees get a pretty clear direction that that is not important to us, so we must be not as good as that. We must be something else. So I think the bigger the organization, everybody needs to know the direction, but they tend to know it farther into the organization by where the money is spent. And so I hope that helps. And I also know that I'm getting pushed here towards the end. So listen, folks, got any more questions, send them along. I am going to flip this back to Whitney, and hope you all have a good week. Take care.